You're cutting off the top of my head, sir. All my spikes are off camera. I was not slouching. So, good morning to those of you joining us online. We're going to be we're going to back up one session because we skipped over a lesson in our quarterly. So, we're going to go back. Now, we already know what happened. Joseph was sold into slavery. He ended up doing so well that he came up out of the ranks of those that were working and doing service to Egypt. But the neat thing about it was he actually was so liked. He gained so much favor, as Brother Junior was talking about, that he was placed in a position of a lot of authority and responsibility. And even though he had maybe not quite understood how things were going to pan out, he knew that God was going to be with him. But you could kind of tell that. So backing up, you can kind of tell that in the story of him sharing his dream with his brothers, and what that entailed and what that led to was him ending up in slavery. And so we're going to be in Genesis chapter 37 for the most part. It says, and Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaf stood around about and made obeisance to my sheaf, bowing down and acknowledging that they were that they're the ruler, basically. Kind of a I don't think I've seen that word except in the Bible. And his brethren said to him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us, or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And then they skip a few more verses. Let's actually read a little bit out of that. So the Bible study author obviously has a point to make, but let's see. So that was 8. He talks about another dream. He said, I had another dream, and this time the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing to me. He told his father and his brothers, but his father rebuked him. What kind of dream is this that you have had? Are your mother and brothers and I going to come and bow down to the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. You see, right there, and the main topic of this study is what can lead to sin, what can stir up our hearts. It says people want to be treated at least fairly, and in truth, we would prefer to be treated better than what we deserve. At the same time, we are often troubled when we see people being treated better than us and better than we think they deserve. See, when we was talking a little bit about judgment on Wednesday and even yesterday, we see the world through our lenses, our understanding of it, right? And here, when Joseph is just simply sharing a dream with them, he might have ulterior motives to that, boasting, maybe, right? It doesn't say anywhere that he was boasting, but he was simply sharing a dream. But that sharing of that information led to the brothers and the family questioning why he was sharing it in the first place. The Bible study author writing this is people want to be treated fairly. You could kind of tell if somebody was to come up to you and say, you know what, I had a dream and you were serving me hand and foot. You were serving me with, putting my gold chains on me, clothing me, doing all these things, getting my food and all that type of stuff. Well, not only probably would you question what in the world kind of world are you living in, but you would question why. Why would that be? Because it's not equal. That's not how things are supposed to be run. At the same time, we often are troubled when we see people being treated better than us and better than what we think they deserve. How many of us here like to watch, I forgot the name of it now. It's a television, network television, but it's Cribs or something like that, but it's about celebrities and their residences and how lavish they live. Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, is that another one that was there? Right. And we see on there, how many of us actually, you don't have to show hands or tell us online or anything like that, but just think about it. How many times do you actually get a little bit jealous? A little bit, the cool word is J, right? Just J. How many of us actually get J of those things that are going on and on TV, right? There was one time I was watching one of those shows and they said they had like, it was 3 dozen bathrooms in their mansion. They had a bunch of rooms, right? But they only have one master bedroom and maybe a couple bedrooms where their relatives sleep or whatever. And all the other rooms are designated for certain uses. This one might have been like an artist, and they had a studio. They had a studio where they painted or wherever they did, right? And if we had the opportunity to do that, right, we would probably do the same thing to have a big living space, enough to be able to furnish our desires, right? If we wanted a place to study, if we wanted a place to be artistic or whatever, we'd probably try to do that. And then, as a matter of convenience, right, we would probably put like a O here and there to be able to make sure that we don't have to go clear across the mansion to be able to find get a restroom break. But how many of us are like, man, they don't need that. They don't need that many O's. They don't need that many rooms or that big of a state. There's man. So I help with a powwow down here, and it's Clement City Powwow Club. And they have a land. They have a piece of land, and they have their dance arbor. They have campsites around, but they don't own anything outside this fence, this designated area. And so when it comes to parking, they have to get creative because they can only allow so many into the parking area because of pedestrians, right? People walking around the campsite, around the powwow grounds. They have to make room for vendors when they want to tow in their trailers and do all that type of stuff. They have to have safety areas to be able to take care of if they have an emergency or anything like that. So if they want to have a really, really big, extravagant powwow, let's say extravagant, when they want to have a large gathering, they have to get creative on how they're going to accommodate everybody. And the way they've been doing it in the past is they line everybody up on the road that they're located on, Sooner Road. I believe it's Sooner Road. And so they park, and it looks crazy. It looks crazy when you're pulling up and you see all the cars lined up for literally like a quarter mile this way, and the powwow is this way, and you can't even see the powwow. There's that many people there. And so the partners on I can't remember which side, south side of them, they help with parking a little bit. The past couple of years, they've been allowing them to use their big old field. They mow it, and then so they have a big parking lot behind their dance grounds. But on the north side, this isn't my feeling, but this is maybe what some people see. On the north side, there's a big estate, but it's not all developed. There's a huge field and a big old driveway with a big old iron gate. They have a fencing around the whole entire property, and then this gigantic mansion with it's like what was it? It was on sale. I don't know if it's still for sale, but it was like $11 million is what it appraised at, and they had a lavish like marble floor, all kinds of stuff, right? So this powwow is growing, right? And they have this big old estate over here. Some of the feeling might be they don't need that much room. We need it more, right? What the author was trying to bring out right there. At the same time, we are from trouble when we see people being treated better than us and better than we think they deserve, right? The brothers in Joseph's story didn't like the idea of having to serve somebody, and especially probably their brother, their own brother, being ruled over by him. But that's the opportunity that the devil takes to be able to infiltrate. It says, that is when jealousy comes knocking at the door of our hearts. Jealousy is dangerous because it corrupts one's heart and usually leads to more tragic sin. The story of Joseph and his brothers attests to this truth. And the author wants us to think about a question right at the beginning of this. It says, why is jealousy so dangerous and corrupting? Well, you can kind of see it right there when you're reading the verses. Right away, and his brethren said to him, shalt thou indeed reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And then it continues on, and they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. Verses 2 through 36 establish the reason Joseph's brothers hated him. And you can kind of continue on later what we read there. It says he had another dream. In that dream, he had the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were probably respected as two probably greater halves of a whole. And what the author wants us to think about is the way parents are, different, but they're together in that they help raise this child. And so it's an illusion. It's not definite, right? It's not defining that the role is there, but it was the parents and the stars, the parents and the sons, the children were going to bow down. We're going to be ruled over by Joseph. Even his father took notice of what he was trying to say, what he was trying to convey. He wasn't trying to say anything, but his father even was a little bit bothered by what was going on. As Joseph wore the special robe Jacob made for his favorite son, Jacob's other sons were constantly reminded their father loved them less than he loved Joseph. One would think Jacob had learned from the mistake of his own parents that they had brought great sorrow and tragedy to their home because of their own divisive favoritism. Isaac had favored Esau, but Rebekah had favored Jacob. When Joseph had dreamed a dream and revealed it to his brothers, they hated him yet the more. The text offers no explanation of what motivated Joseph to share his dreams with his brothers, but it does reveal that God spoke to Joseph through dreams. Dreams and Joseph's ability to interpret them became a major aspect of the Joseph story. There is no indication Joseph sought to taunt his brothers with the dreams he shared with them. It simply states he told it to his brethren. Although he would comprehend the meaning of these dreams in the future, how could Joseph have known the exactness of their fulfillment at that time? Nevertheless, as the story continues, it would become apparent to Joseph and his family that God gave these dreams to him and that they were prophetic. And then it goes on, he talks about what we've already talked about, how the dream was relayed to the brothers and what it meant, right? This is hindsight. We're able to know what study this text and be able to figure out what's going on. But here, Joseph is just simply sharing what God had told him, communicated to him. But that's when they are stirred up. It says, "For Joseph to claim he dreamed what he did was the same as declaring God revealed this to him." They understood the seriousness of it, and this made them hate him even more. Not only were they taking it that something's going on here, but that it wasn't that they had to acknowledge somebody, and they had to acknowledge that somebody ruled over them. But the fact that it was Joseph, right, it continues to build this hate inside them. It continues to kind of fervor, kind of fester. Fester is a good word. Whenever we have a wound and we don't take care of it, it continues to, bacteria gets in there and continues to destroy not only good body cells and everything, but it continues to grow in its own capacity. And it might even spread. That's why infection, when it occurs, is so critical to take care of. If it happens within our body, right, we have to make sure that we take care of it. Otherwise, it could spread to other parts of our body. And I didn't know this, but when I had strep throat at the beginning of the year sometime, they say strep throat is actually kind of a serious thing, because if it gets into your body, it can actually affect your heart. It can actually give you what is it called? Some kind of it can give you that where it puts your heart off beat because it affects the muscles. Yeah, it'll harm you, but it's a sore throat. But that's the point. That's the point the author's trying to make. The fact that he told them this dream, they hated him. They didn't care for him already. And then to see that he was getting more favored treatment, it continued to boil over. They never took care of it. And then they finally hear this, and they're like, well, I mean, we're not going to ever get rid of him unless we actually get rid of him. And that's where, when we talk about the story, or we talk about what the question was, why is jealousy so dangerous? Because if you don't take care of it, if you don't seek to try to correct it, right? Jealousy, you can recognize it because there's no basis for it. When we are looking at the world, just like we were talking about with the celebrities, when we're looking at the world through our own lenses, through our own experiences, we have no basis, we have no foundation to be able to judge somebody that wants to spend $1 million on a toilet, on right? For whatever we know, they might have earned it. Now, they might have come into it. They might have a lottery. We have. There's a lot of stuff about lottery winners too, that people are drawn to go spend all that money, but when they find out what it does to people, they're not so jealous of them because it changes people, right? Money in those big sums like that will change your life, and it could be for the worse. But we have no foundation. We have no basis in to be able to judge that. More what I was talking about last week, when we're looking at the world through our own lenses, it's called a paradigm. The lens of our world, the way we go about it, we don't have any foundation to be able to say that we hate this. Like the brothers here, they hate Joseph. For what reason? Just that he's getting favor, just that he's getting likeness and whatnot. They could say that it's unequal treatment, but what are they getting? And there's no mention of it right here, but that's the same way that we have to think about it ourselves. What are we getting from that situation? We're not getting anything when we're looking at celebrities on TV. That's just content that they want to fill, because they have advertisers that pay for that time, and they think that they're going to get viewership, so they're going to make money. They're literally going to make money from us watching somebody produce a documentary about their home. More so, we see what's it? Home and Garden TV. They do those renovations or anything like that. It's no different than those things. They're just trying to fill the content so that they can have advertisers pay for their programming. We're not getting anything out of it other than being able to watch TV for a little bit. We're not getting treated unequally in some respect, one way or another. There's no basis. There's no foundation. That's what we have to be wary of when it starts creeping in. When he was talking about this and they questioned him, right? They didn't have any understanding. Again, no basis. They were literally asking him, what's going on? And they didn't know that this is the first of many times that he's going to encounter these things from God and be able to share. But they didn't have any understanding of what was going on. Not only did they didn't have any basis on that, their claims of unequal treatment, but they didn't even have an understanding of what was about to happen, right? And those two things lead us in trying to understand where jealousy can interfere. And this jealousy, ultimately, why it's so dangerous, because it gets our mind in a place where, again, there's no basis, there's no foundation, and then there's no understanding. There's not just understanding where things are, but where things are going as well. And so we start to make up our mind about how we're going to take care of this situation personally, how we're going to correct it in our own understanding, in our own experiences. It says, there's another question here, and this brings up a good point of when we think about sharing with others. Maybe we quite haven't vetted it out. Maybe we're too excited to be able to hold it in. We just want to share. It says, what are the advantages and disadvantages of sharing our aspirations with others? Now, it wasn't his aspiration to be able to rule over everybody. He was being communicated with God. Maybe he was wanting to share that God was actually doing something in his life. But nonetheless, when we have something we can't hold in, right? What's the advantage of sharing that? Sharing that happiness, right? We have praise time. The different things that we're going through kind of gives us an opportunity to be able to share with others that the good things that God is working in our life. The disadvantage of that, well, some might not like it, that they're not getting the same treatment, that they don't have the same relationship with God. And that's not to say everybody should have the same relationship, but in their own understanding and their own way of looking at things, they might think that they are due some kind of same favor, same blessing or anything like that. Likewise, they also might try to see that's the part in business, and I don't like ever mixing our worship and our service to the Lord with business, but people might get jealous and they might try to corrupt what we're trying to do, right? We're sharing that God's working in our lives. Same way with church, God's working in our lives to be able to do some of the things that we can do. But some might not like it, and a disadvantage of that is they might try to interfere. They might try to interrupt. They might try to take away from that in their own, however they might want to do that. So there's a good and bad. If it's truly of God, it's really, really good. It's a good opportunity to praise Him and be able to give that testify about what God is doing in our lives. But we don't want to share just to make somebody jealous, just to make somebody think about things. That's never a good idea to also praise things that are going on in our life and say, look, if you serve God, you could be doing this too. Even though that might be true, their service might not be the same. Their call to the Lord might not be the same, and what they do for church or for their Great Commission might be different, right? But the point is, jealousy got into the middle of this story with Joseph, and it was because he was sharing. He was giving he was testifying about what God was doing in his life. So it goes on to see when they had already talked about it, right? They wanted to catch him because they were done. They were done listening to him. They didn't give him any more opportunity. They were going to resolve their situation in their own hands. Not only did they not like the guy, they didn't want to be ruled by him, and so they had to take care of it. They didn't understand what the dreams meant, but they had an idea of how things were going to unfold if they didn't do something about it. And so they were called by their own minds and their own will and obligation, apparently, that they had to take care of this. And so we see in further on in Genesis, and when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. And they said to one another, Behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him and cast him into some pit. And we will say, Some evil beast hath devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. They're doing it because they don't want to see him succeed, right? First of all, they heard the dream. They understood the situation. He's getting a little bit more favor, but now they're suspecting. Again, they don't have any understanding of what's to come to pass or anything like that. But their understanding is, well, if this is really going to happen, then we could change it. We can alter this course. It says, we shall see what will become of his dreams. Is it really going to be the ruler? How can he be the ruler if he's dead? And Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands and said, Let us not kill him. And Reuben said unto them, Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands to deliver him to his father again. Joseph's brothers had left their home to pasture Jacob's flocks. Sometime after that, Jacob sent Joseph to see about their welfare and return with a report. This whole situation was because Joseph was actually doing something good, making sure that they were okay because they had gone off. They were tending to their duties, but Joseph was asked to go and check on them. They said to one another, is a way of describing how the entire group of men were basically saying the same thing. What they said was dripping with ridicule, literally, oh, look, the master of dreams, here comes that man. That man indicates they had already had this discussion. Verses 5 and 8 communicate how deeply Joseph's brothers loathed him for the dreams he had shared with them. It is curious that they literally called Joseph the master of dreams, given that Joseph's dreams showed him to be their master. The irony is that Joseph would one day be their master, and they would repeatedly call themselves his servants. When they're talking about let us slay him, it says talks about how they had a mob mentality. And again, this talks about how dangerous jealousy is. How many of us, when we're thinking about those things that we were talking about earlier, want to get somebody on our side? It's not only because we think that we're already at an equal disadvantage or as a unequal footing with them, we think that we have to bring in others to be able to substantiate our claim. Some of the conversation might be, look how ridiculous this is, because we're soliciting being able to not only call them ridiculous and whatever other names that we can think of, but also that somebody can back us up, because we don't want to be alone. We don't want to be out there saying these things by ourselves. That's what happened with these brothers. Not one of them could take care of Joseph alone. Instead, they had to gang up on him. how bad is it that your family wants to kill you, wants to get rid of you, but everybody's in on it. Everybody's knows what's going on, right? Because they can't do it alone. I'm not saying that one couldn't have taken care of. I mean, they probably thought that one of them could, but the other ones, they had to solicit the opinion of the others to be able to feel good about it. See, that's what it all is. They had to be able to make it appear that it was correct. It was the right thing to do. Even though it wasn't, and they couldn't even acknowledge that, in their minds, they had to be motivated to be able to take this action. And what motivated them was, well, all of us are in on it. All of us know what to do. After murdering their brother, they would throw him in a pit. The brothers also came up with a story to cover up the murder. They would say Joseph was killed and eaten by an evil beast. This murder and cover-up would ensure that Joseph's dreams would never come to pass. Their final statement, "We shall see what will become of his dreams," may be more than mockery. At some level, they may have believed there could be some truth to Joseph's dreams. See, and this acknowledges that the Bible study author is acknowledging that they didn't quite understand what was going on, what really was being shared, but they were afraid. They were afraid of what might happen if they didn't intervene. And jealousy is a form of fear. And what's that? I can't remember. Oh, FOMO. FOMO is a cool hip term. FOMO. Fear of missing out. Because you're not part of the group. You're not part of the cool. Might not even be a cool clique. You're just not part of the group, and you don't get to see what goes on. You don't get to see what happens because you weren't there. This is what they're experiencing. They're experiencing, well, I didn't get to be selected as ruler, so I'm not going to be able to experience those things that are going to go on. So I don't want to do that. What can I do to be able to take care of this and make sure that I'm possibly a ruler? I mean, it might have already been decided, but maybe we can change it. Maybe I could be part of it. Maybe I can actually replace what he's talking about. But they believed a little bit of it, see? And that's how the Lord works. He's already told us that he's going to come back and that he rose again. He had prophesied all these things. But you can kind of see it more and more, how the world is actually getting worse. You don't understand this when you're a kid, how things are getting worse. But as you come and develop knowledge and wisdom, as you gain that wisdom from not only the Bible, but just your experiences, you're able to see how the world probably isn't getting any better. We talk about green energy and all these things that we want to do to save the planet. Every day that goes by, we're actually creating more and more hazards because we have to sustain our birth rate. Our what do you call it? I think it's our birth rate is still outpacing our death rate. And that's a good thing if we want to increase the population. It's a bad thing if we want to save the planet, because we have to keep on producing energy. We have to keep on producing this food. We have to do all these things. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is to be able to actually use the technology we have. And I think it's like our technology overall is like, I don't know, it's like 35% efficient or something like that. When you go and you actually create a gallon of gas and you can burn it for 30 miles for 1 gallon of gas or whatever, the amount of money the amount of energy it took to produce that, to be able to extract the coal, extract the oil, extract all these things, to be able to do that, to be able to get you from here, from wherever you live back to church, It's so inefficient in the terms of things. But we still have to have food if we wanted to walk everywhere. We just wouldn't make it on time. As you could tell, the natives were moved. They didn't have vehicles when they moved us. They were moved hundreds, thousands of miles away from their homelands. All they needed was food, but we still need that food. We still need that energy. And that's walking is the most efficient way to get around. It might not be, the best time for a lot of us that don't like to exercise or any of that type of stuff. But you can kind of see where God was telling us you have to get ready for a world that's not going to like you, and it's going to start deteriorating. It's going to be people are going to be at each other's throats. Countries are going to go to war with countries. It's going to be a disaster. By the time I get back, there's only going to be a few that actually believe, that actually stake their claim that I was going to return. But for those few, it'll be glorious. It'll be those that went to sleep for a little bit. They're going to raise up. All this type of stuff. It's true because he's already told us. Same way Joseph was already telling them. You know what? There's going to be one. There's going to be 11 tribes, but there's going to be one that raises above all of them. And that's what he was trying to convey to here. And they didn't really believe, all this type of stuff because they had their hatred and jealousy and all that. But they had a little bit of a foretelling, a little bit of a prophecy ahead of time. They were told a little bit ahead of time. And they didn't like it because they were, again, that fear. Talk about his question right there is how does jealousy add fuel to a mob mentality? It's that fear. It's that drive to be able to try to correct a situation that doesn't need any correction. It's try to mold that situation to our wants, our needs, and our desires. But that's not what it's there for. Finishing up here, it says, and it came to pass when Joseph was come unto his brethren, they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him, and they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty; there was no water in it. They sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels, bearing spicery and balm and myrrh, and going to carry it down to Egypt. And Judah said unto his brethren, what profit is if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brethren were content. Then there passed by Midianites, merchantmen, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they brought Joseph into Egypt. Again, talking about what had occurred, what was going on. In the end, they didn't want to slay him. They didn't really want to kill him and do these things, but they wanted to get rid of the situation of what was going on because they were afraid of what might happen. Instead, they found one of them that would probably didn't like him the least, I guess you could call it. Said, you know what? Why don't we profit from this situation? Even though we've done this and taken care of it, we could still maybe do some good. Criminals, when they get a little bit of a conscience, they want to say, well, we didn't quite, do all. we didn't quite set out to everything we said we were going to do. Maybe they did. But that's what happened. I said, well, let's take care of this. We're gonna get rid of him, but maybe we can profit a little bit more. We didn't kill him, but we're gonna take care of him, and then we're gonna put a little change in our pocket. 20 pieces of silver, probably not a lot, but it was enough to be able to say, you know what? Feel good about this. Feel good about selling your own brother into slavery. The special coat that Jacob made for Joseph, and which Joseph apparently wore all the time, gave Joseph special status. Consequently, it became a continual reminder to Joseph's brothers that Jacob favored and loved Joseph more than he loved them. The coat represented everything Joseph's brothers despised about him. It should be also noted that the seeds of their hatred for Joseph were probably planted by their mothers, given the jealousy their mothers had toward Rachel, Joseph's mother, and the only one of Jacob's wives Jacob truly loved. Their hatred for Joseph had years to simmer, and now they had the opportunity to give vent to it by stripping him of this symbol of his special status. The Hebrew word translated stripped communicates this was a violent act. When they took his robe off, it wasn't a nice thing, in other words. After stripping Joseph of his robe, they tossed him into a pit. Given that the verse mentions the pit was dry, it most likely was a cistern. Cisterns were either natural pits or deep holes people dug out for the purpose of catching and holding rainwater. Water was arguably the most important natural resource in the entire ancient Near East. Thus, it is not surprising that a multitude of cisterns have been discovered from that time period. The location where this happened was probably a regular rest stop for pastoralists looking for places to water their flocks. Okay, so herdsmen taking their flocks out may have found this as a watering hole. It may indicate this assault on Joseph happened during the dry season or during a time of drought. Note the callousness of these men. After violently stripping Joseph of his robe and throwing him into the pit with no food or water, they sat down to eat bread. As Joseph cried out to them in his distress to release him, his brothers were impervious to his pleas. In Genesis, the phrase lifted up their eyes and looked signals something significant was about to happen. In this instance, the brothers saw a company of Ishmaelites, descendants of Abraham's son Ishmael, on its way to Egypt for trade. In those days, there were substantial slave trade in that region, so it fits that Judah recommended selling Joseph to the Ishmaelites. He explained that this is just good logic to sell Joseph instead of murdering him. Judah had enough sense to realize that no good would come from murdering their brother, their flesh and blood. This may come across as noble, but there was nothing noble about discussing whether they should murder their brother or engage him in human trafficking by selling him into slavery. Judah, I like how the author slipped in human trafficking in that. It's a current term of how they do things these days. Politically correct, yeah. But we already discussed that, right? You murder him or sell him to as a slave. Not really good either way. As nice as that sounded to them, it would make more sense to sell Joseph into slavery, be rid of him, and pocket some silver as well. The brothers lifted up Joseph out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites who brought Joseph into Egypt. The brothers must have believed that they were finally rid of Joseph as they watched the Ishmaelites, also called Midianites, merchantmen, take him away into slavery. And how conflicted they must have felt. They on one hand probably, yeah, we got rid of him. We don't have to see if his dreams come to pass. But on the other hand, they knew that that was his brother. That's why it was mentioned, our flesh. He's in the verse, what does it say? It talks about Joseph said to his brother, what profit is if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come and let us sell him as Ishmaelites, and let it not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. There's a lot to be said about that. They knew what they were doing was wrong. They knew that they had an opportunity to change it, but they still didn't like him enough that they wanted to get rid of him. They knew that there was something special about him, but they didn't want to even deal with any of that. They wanted to wash their hands of it. What happened? Well, go back to last Sunday and see where Brother Junior picked that story up, where he was made he was actually honored, and then he got into a situation he didn't fall into temptation to, where he was even going to be more treated more ruggedly and more not well. So any questions about that short little Bible study that we went back and made sure to pick up? All right. Well, we're going to get ready for our main worship service. And so, Brother Chris, would you dismiss our Bible study, our Sunday school?